Ladies and gentlemen, this video is dedicated to fellow mountaineer, friend, fellow YouTuber, and the beloved Chris Petrie, which most of you knew as Gold and Blue Dude. So, in saying that, I have something I have to do. Hat, check. Sunglasses, check. Pepsi, check. Sources, check. Thick skin, check. Let's go. In a recent interview with CBS Sports, did Houston Cougar head football coach Dana Holgorsen allude to the fact that Houston had been kept out of the Big 12 all these years because Texas and back in the day, Texas A&M were scared to play the Cougars? That's what we're going to talk about today. So let's dig right into the show. And once again, like I said, I'm dedicating this to Gold and Blue Dude, who will be dearly missed. And I almost really didn't feel like doing a video today, but I thought, you know what? As dedicated as Golden Blue Dude was to getting videos out, I mean, he was doing videos literally like 1 or 2 days before he passed away, and he was not feeling good then, and he was pushing through and doing videos anyway, and he would want me, I think, to keep going and press on, and that's what I'm going to do in his honor. So, let's talk about Dana Holgorsen and his recent interview. And I'm gonna tell you if I think he's telling the truth, if I think Texas and Texas A&M were in fact scared to play Houston. Like I mentioned, Dana Holgorsen did an interview recently on CBS Sports. While CBS was in town for the Final Four, they were able to get Dana for a few minutes and ask him some questions. And I'll leave a link to that interview in the description box if you want to check it out for yourself. But during that interview, he talked about a lot of things. But the one thing that really stood out to me and what I want to focus on in this episode is the quote he made about why Houston was left out of the Big 12 when it was formed about 30 years ago. He claimed it was because Texas and Texas A&M didn't want to play Houston. He talked about, Charlie Ward, who was a great quarterback, Heisman winning quarterback at Houston back in the late 80s. He talked about Phi Slama Jama, the great Houston basketball program. And he even talked about track star Carl Lewis, who's a Houston alum and who won multiple gold medals, one of the greatest Olympians of all time, and was actually one of my heroes as a kid, to be honest with you. So without directly saying it, he basically said that those schools were scared of Houston. And we all remember several years later when the Big 12 lost Nebraska, Missouri, and Texas A&M, they had to backfill. Once again, Houston was left out. Instead of bringing in Houston, they brought in my team, West Virginia, and they brought in TCU, who ironically was actually also left out of the forming of the original Big 12 back in 1996 and was a former conference mate with Houston in the Southwest Conference they before the Big 12 was formed. And when you look at the forming of the Big 12 in 96, it's when the Big 8, what was then the Big 8 conference, merged with 4 Texas schools from the Southwest Conference. Those Texas schools were University of Texas, Texas A&M, Baylor, and Texas Tech. Now, along with Houston, a couple other notable schools that were left out of that merger were TCU and SMU. So none of those schools, Houston, TCU, SMU, none were invited into that merger. And in this video, I'm going to focus on Houston, obviously. And when examining why the Cougars were left out, I looked at the first thing I looked at was how long had they been in the Southwestern Conference? Maybe they were new to the Southwestern Conference, and maybe the other 4 schools had been longtime members and just wanted to stick together. And that might be the case if you look at Texas, Texas A&M, and Baylor, because they were all 3 original founding members of the Southwestern Conference in 1915. So that would make sense, right? But there's an outlier, and that's Texas Tech. Texas Tech had only been a member since 1960, only 16 years longer than Houston. And they got an invitation to the Big 12. Also, when you look at TCU and SMU, who were also left out, they had been members since 1923 and 1918, respectively. And they also weren't in part of the merger. So why weren't those 3 schools included? So I kind of ruled out, them not being in the conference long enough as the reason. Then you look at on-field performance in football. I thought maybe Houston just wasn't good at football. They didn't think they were a strong enough brand, and I had actually read that. I actually used ChatGPT and asked ChatGPT the reason, and this is the reason they said. They said because Houston's football program wasn't strong enough. That's not accurate, folks. Now you can make that argument about TCU because back then TCU had a losing record. They weren't a good football program back then, back in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. Really their whole time in the Southwestern Conference, they weren't very good. However, that's not the case with Houston. Houston had an all-time record in the Southwestern Conference of 115, 108, and 4, which is a winning percentage of .515. A winning record. A little over 500, right? Now, when you compare that with Texas Tech, who, like I said, was part of that Big 12 merger, they had a record of 201, 187, and 11. That's a winning percentage of .518, only 0.03 of a point higher than Houston historically during their days in the Southwestern Conference. That's not a big enough difference to matter. So you can't say Houston's program wasn't successful enough. Now, at that particular time, they did seem to be trending in the wrong direction. When the decision to form the Big 12 was finalized in 1994, Houston was coming off 3 straight losing seasons and a 1993 season where they were just 1-9. However, before that skid, they had a 10-win season in 1990 and a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, the aforementioned Charlie Ward, in 1989. So I don't think that is a legit reason to keep them out. So that only leaves 3 scenarios that make sense. One, that Texas and Texas A&M were in fact scared of Houston. 2, Houston just didn't have the fan support and the fan following to warrant being in the Big 12 when compared to the other programs. Or 3, their stadium wasn't up to par. Maybe that played a factor. Personally, I think it's a combination of number 2 and number 3. Houston is and was, back then even, a pro sports town. The other Texas teams, the ones that merged into the Big 12, were not pro sports towns. Baylor's in Waco, Texas is in Austin, Texas A&M's in College Station, and Texas Tech's in Lubbock, very small town of Lubbock. Being in a pro sports town, fans spent more of their time and money following the pro sports teams, just like they do today in a lot of cases. In Houston at that time, the Houston Oilers were the biggest show in town at that time. As for the stadium part, Houston played in Robertson Stadium. They've now upgraded and built a brand new stadium. It's called TDECU Stadium. I think it was built around 2014. Houston fans, you can let me know in the comments. But back then it was called Robertson. They played in a stadium called Robertson Stadium. And based on what I've read online, that stadium was not in really very good shape and was not up to standards to be in a conference like the Big 12, like they were trying to form when they formed the Big 12 conference. Now, I don't think capacity had anything to do with it because Baylor's stadium at that time wasn't very big either. So I don't think it was capacity, but I do think maybe the condition of the stadium, maybe it was too old, maybe it just needed upgrades, and Houston had not done that, and they didn't want to play games in that stadium. I mean, that's very possible. So I think it's a combination of the stadium and the fact that they didn't have a large fan following because they were in a pro sports town. So at the end of the day, I don't think Texas was scared to play Houston because they weren't scared to play Texas Tech, who had won the same amount of or same percentage of games basically in the Southwestern Conference as Houston had. I think Houston just didn't carry the fan support, like I said, and their stadium was probably an issue. So I think Dana Holgorsen was just doing what he is supposed to do as the coach of the program and as an avid, strong supporter of Houston as a school. I think he was just speaking up for his team. And I'm sure Dana and many in the Houston Cougar community probably actually believe that that's the reason they were scared of Houston because Houston had some recent success. But as an outsider, someone on the outside looking in who I'm not a fan of Houston. I'm not a fan of any other teams. Matter of fact, I probably dislike Texas as much as the next guy. But looking at this objectively, I just don't think that's the reason. I don't think it makes sense. I just don't think Houston had the following at the time. And I think that was probably the same reason Texas kept them out in 2012. Now, what do I think about Houston being in the Big 12 today? I think they're a great addition. We lost Texas. We lost Oklahoma, the 2 top brands in the league. We need to fill the gap. Houston helps fill the Texas gap some. Like I said, they don't have near the fan following as the University of Texas, but they do get us in the Houston market, which is one of the largest cities in America, and it will help fill that gap, not only from a fan perspective, but from a TV and market perspective. So I think Houston's a great addition to the Big 12 conference, and they probably did deserve to be in it a lot sooner. But you know what? The past is the past. Today's the day, and they will be members of the Big 12 conference beginning July 1st of 2024. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section, Couz's Corner family. Let me know what you think about Houston being left out of the Big 12 all those years, almost 30 years now. I want to get your opinion. Texas fans, were you scared to play Houston? And Houston fans, do you really think Texas was scared to play you guys and Texas A&M too at that point? At the original forming of the league in 1996, do you think they were scared of Houston? I want to know your honest opinions. I'm open to all opinions here. It's okay if you disagree. Just like Golden Blue Dude always said, feel free to debate me. Feel free to disagree with me. I welcome it. So, guys, if you like this video, I ask that you please hit the thumbs up button for me right below. Please share it out with your friends. Please subscribe. Help me get to my goal of 5,000 subscribers. And I ask you, please, there's a GoFundMe. It's on my YouTube community tab. It's all over Twitter. Joey Foster's posted it. I've posted it. Go to the GoFundMe page for Chris Petrie's family, Golden Blue Dude's family. His YouTube channel was their main source of income, folks. So his family needs financial assistance and help burying him. His service is coming up later this week, and that money would go a long way. So if you have the financial means to, even if it's only $1 or $2, please go to the GoFundMe and support that. I will leave a link to that as well in my description. I really appreciate you tuning into this video. And until the next one, Q Country Roads.